Hey, sorry for the pause, as it were. There was a bunch of stuff going on through January. Largely, was spending it trying to find a job. Well, uh, Cheeto in Chief is now Cheeto in Chief. A Nazi got punched, which is actually one of the nicer things that's happened so far. And in truth, feeling good to be an American. People are raising up, protesting against fascism, and my leanings are becoming more and more anti-fa or anti-fascist. You could say it's been always anti-fascist because I've always had a healthy belief that Nazis were inherently evil, but I'm more and more identifying as anti-fa. So there you go. And hilariously enough, and a lot of this actually comes down to political correctness or not. Because actually, while I start with an anecdote, a couple of days, or yesterday, a couple of days ago, I can't remember which, I was on a ridiculous Facebook post about Islam. Hilariously enough, it was from one of the skeptic atheist things, and hilariously enough, it was actually kind of funny. I found out that calling out Muslim and Islam for their rather archaic Iron Age practices is not racist. Stating that the Mormons do roughly the same thing, but their dietary restriction is coffee instead of ham, apparently is massively racist, don't you know? Those poor Mormons. And because the real enemy is Islam, even though even though we just recently had a big thing with child brides, child molestation, and multiple marriage things with, hilariously enough, the FDLS. Anyways, and actually this gets to the heart of the issue. Which is political correctness. All right, whether you're trying to point out that one religion's fanaticism actually draws from another religion's fanaticism, or some religions are just as fanatical as others, but because public perceptions, they think, oh, that can't happen. You end up being labeled as politically correct, or if you're saying, I'm telling someone, hey, don't be a racist douche, you're kind of being labeled as political correct. Okay, so here's the funny thing. I was actually reading an article about this about a couple of weeks back, and actually I was thinking about bringing up the article. I'll probably find it and label it and put it in the description box. It hilarious enough, the history of the term starts in colleges as a mock term, or as a term to quietly mock people. Just not the way you think, hilariously enough. The term itself started off as a way of mocking people who were a little bit too full of themselves in the leftist circles, or the pretentious. Kind of like how special snowflakes started off initially as a term from the kink community in which to label people who thought they were somehow special or written out because they were into BDSM. Gee, I wonder where they could Anyway, actually, as an academic term, hilarious enough, it was used by several by this one person who actually is listed in the article about how even though she knew white men who tried to be as politically correct as possible, it was they would still do and end up doing something that would it be inherently prejudiced or bigoted. It was a kind of used as a term of differentiation, or not differentiation. It was uses anyways, big words. Uh, and it wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s that the right got a hold of it, stating that leftist professors were indoctrinating their children into communism via political correct practices, and it took off. Sorry, if you labeled someone African American or Jewish American instead of to New York, or someone as homosexual instead of say declared bachelor, or apparently it was political correctness gone wrong. Which kind of where I started to hear it. Actually, I'm surprised it didn't. I'm surprised it didn't come from business practices. Actually, this was actually also the time in which business started implementing sexual harassment, sensitivity training, anger management classes to deal with people who were or middle in the middle kind of lower to middle management arena who weren't exactly ready for prime time. This also coincided with the fact that a lot of white collar businesses were becoming less white and male, essentially the type of jokes and type of comments that were pretty much considered all good in a largely Anglo hyper-masculine environment really aren't all that good in a some indigestion in a less hyper-masculine, less masculine and less Anglo-centric area, and that's what it is. Now, as you can hear, this ball of this whole idea of political correctness gone mad. It started really steamrolling until it actually became a political point. Trump, a lot of Trump supporters actually support him because he was against political correctness. And you have this thing where it's almost like a thing. It's like, if I'm not allowed to do this very, very vulgar thing, and it becomes this bit of crap, or well, it's political correctness BS. They're throwing me to the wolves because I'm not opining in liberal democracy. Of course, again, uh, I've been libertarian for a long while, so I recognize it for the bullcrap it is, because it's kind of stuff that you hear almost all the time in that particular political circle. Because, and this is actually the reason why libertarians will won't get anything other than like as high as a government office, based on the fact that they too much want to be human cartoons, and society doesn't want that. Now, this also segues into guys like Milo Yiannopoulos and whatnot, who are trying to be provocateurs. The problem is the people they want to be would have kicked the living crap out of them. And it's like, to to do a good comparison between the two, say Milo Yiannopoulos versus Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce, the famed Jewish comedian and provocateur. Actually, the reason why a lot of comedy is the way it is right now is because of guys like Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Flip Wilson, Red Fox, and whatnot. They try to push the envelope of what is decent. I mean, hell, it's like one of they actually described one of Lenny Bruce's obscenity trials like a setup for one of the jokes. It's like he made a joke, a fairly anti-Catholic joke. The next day he gets pulled in court. There's 15 people with ash on their hands because it's the day after Ash Wednesday. Literally a setup for one of his jokes. And at the time, you could say at the time when Lenny Bruce operated was actually best described by Robert Crumb, the famed cartoonist, who actually put it this way: most of the guys who were in their 30s and 40s at the time, 30s, 40s, and 50s at the time, kind of wanted to insulate themselves from the trauma of World War II, which they participated in. The battle, the death, even where a lot of them helped in liberating the camps. Seeing that fairly dark void of almost evil, and they wanted to insulate themselves from that. So that's the reason why everything was very, very sanitized during that period. And guys like Lenny Bruce and all kind of thought about that. And then in the 80s, Reagan and Bush were trying to create this thing. But fortunately, you had that Southwestern atheist guy, Bill Hicks, Sam Kinison, and a few others who I can't think of at the moment, who would fight against this. I mean, and this is something I've been an advocate for free speech since I was 12. I've fought against the belief that people should fight for the ability to speak their minds, but at the same time, fighting, believing that when someone is criticizing you, removes the basic tenet of free speech, which quite frequently, which quite literally should be the freedom to express a well thought out opinion. Just because you're eloquent does not mean you're smart. Okay? I mean, the only reason Milo Yiannopoulos is popular is because he's able to parrot all the banal, horrid, sophomoric 5-year-old logic level MRA alt-right Nazi BS with an English accent, which unfortunately is it. I mean, and at the end of the day, that's kind of where this comes down to, because it's like saying someone is, saying, well, you're biologically male. That means you're male. No. It's like the whole transgender has been around since the 70s. Yes, I know I'm bouncing from topic to topic, but the main gist is what I'm talking about: political correctness. Okay, saying it originally started off as gender identities. Okay, then people started realizing, of course, and again, and a lot of pre or post-Christian civilizations, like pre-British, pre-colonial India, Samoa, Thailand, if I remember correctly, Burma, Laos, and whatnot, actually do have third genders. Oh, and whoever stated that intersex is not a gender, okay, you do know there is intersex is actually the current term for hermaphroditism, right? Right. Okay. Anyways, so as I was getting back into stating that if someone wants to present themselves as female and say they are female, yes, that is not political correctness. That's actually just them being a decent human being and claiming that, well, technically that's not free speech. You're forcing your beliefs onto someone else. That actually is censorship. And at the end of the day, you gotta understand. Political correctness, what most people refer to political correctness, is actually best summed up by Neil Gaiman, who, once he changed the term political correctness in his thought with basic human decency, it became a lot more clear. Anyways, this is me screaming into the void.